Christian nations are the only nations they can live in where they could believe or not believe. Help us to appeal to government leaders that they have a duty and an oath. So I think this is one of our most important campaigns right now, is lobbying government and bringing awareness to the Coronation Oath.
In 1953, it was the first time it was ever video recorded, and it was a major ceremony and hours long that they did. And Queen Elizabeth kissed the Bible, swore to uphold the Bible. That was and remains the royal law. Our goal is to say, no, we're not going to comply and allow it, and try and make it a better place for those that come after us. And the only way that's going to happen is by us taking a stand. It doesn't, as God said in the Bible, he hated fence sitters. And as you've mentioned before, Tanya, to take a stand, you need to decide at some point whether you are going to support your beliefs or not.
Hello and welcome to tonight's show, where we provide information and resources for everyday Canadians. We're so thankful you can join us. Our guest speaker this evening is our good friend, David Lindsay, and the title of tonight's show is Bill C9, the Coronation Oath. We welcome you to part 4 of this series on Bill C9. Be sure to head over to our website to catch up on the first 3 episodes if you missed them. It's April 29th, 2026, and this is the Empower Hour. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Tanya Gaw, the founder and leader of Action4Canada. For over 10 years, Tanya and the Action4Canada team have been bringing public awareness to the many serious issues facing our nation. Every week, Tanya highlights effective strategies, resources, and victories to inspire us to take action in our communities and to make a difference in our country. Will you all please help me welcome Tanya Gaw. Hello, Tanya.
Hi, Heather. Oh, I love listening to your introductions as you're going over Action4Canada, the resources, the strategy. I'm like, man, we should have 1 million people following us. And I believe that if that were the case and we had chapters in every town and community, I think we would have knocked this out of the park a couple of years ago. So I really want to encourage people, hear what it is that Heather's saying, and that joining a chapter in your community is really key to overturning all of this bad legislation and the policies that are like slipping right under our noses. It's because, the city councils and the school board trustees, they just think that they can rubber stamp anything they want because they don't have any opposition to it. And as I've said, and Heather, you've heard, like for the past 11 years, that has been what we are growing here at Action4Canada, is the ability to mobilize Canadians and give you effective resources and campaigns so that you can achieve some big wins in your community. And so I'm excited because in this last month especially, we've had a major win in Alberta, and that is just testimony to what happens when even just a handful of people can effectively approach government with the kind of evidence and information they need to start making decisions on their part. And of course, our notices of liability also have an impact, because we've got to hold these people with even the threat of being held personally liable for their actions. Because so far, under the Justin Trudeau government and now Mark Carney, they think they're above the law. And so I'm really looking forward to tonight's show, because I have said for many years, I met David back in 2020 on July 1st, I believe. And yeah, it was. He was the first one that introduced me to the Coronation Oath. And so with his help, we and our members and our team have been digging into this and helping to educate Canadians. And now we're taking a shift, and we're really focusing on educating elected officials, because the Coronation Oath, as I say many times, it's a living, breathing document. It's a buried treasure that needs to be resurrected. And for a long time, the government has wanted to convince us that it's a merely, just a ceremonial document, but it really, really isn't. And I believe that they're deliberately overlooking the Coronation Oath because they know that it does bind them to uphold our sovereignty and the rule of law, everything that is based on biblical Christian principles. And isn't that what we're seeing not only in Canada, but every Western European Christian nation is a full-on attack, whether it's immigration, sexual deviancy, an attack against parental rights, property rights. I mean, the list just goes on. And I'm going to share my screen in a moment because David has been on so many times talking about our guaranteed inalienable rights and the Coronation Oath that we've actually created a David Lindsay page. And I want to share that with you because it would be worth taking one video and just watching one a week until you've gone through all of the interviews that we've had with David. Because as you become educated, I always say knowledge is power, and then you can go into your local elected officials and have a conversation with them. You can answer their questions because right now what we're finding as our teams are going in, it isn't necessarily that these are all bad people that have been elected to office, but that they have been lobbied by these minority groups, whether it's Muslims or Sikhs or the LGBTQ, who have used victimization to advance their agenda and then using our human rights code as a protection. And instead, it is dueling rights that is really seriously impeding upon the rights of the majority, as well as, in some instances, like Islam, causing a national security threat. And so we have every reason that we should be diving in, getting educated, and then sharing this information and going into these elected officials and saying, you know, this is one scenario you've heard from a minority group with, of course, an agenda, but these are the facts. And you can't know those facts unless you're actually investing the time and so that you can go in and have those conversations. And that's what we've been doing. And I believe that is why we've had the recent win in Alberta. And I mean, this has been years of lobbying government and bringing awareness. But that's the reason now I believe that they're pulling all of the political and ideological agendas out of the schools. That means SOGI, that means CRT, that means DEI. But what we also need to make sure that while we're going through this process, that we do elevate the fact that we are indeed a Christian nation and that it is those biblical principles that are giving us these freedoms. Because 100 times I've gone over this with those of you who have been watching the Empower Hour. You don't see these kind of freedoms in Pakistan, North Korea, the 56 Islamic majority countries, India. In fact, you see the opposite because their belief system is built on, I'm going to say it, false gods. And some of them have no gods at all, but it's communism. And then one of the false gods I want to say is secularism. So you can see societies that there is evidence that people are not benefiting under these systems. And that's why we're raising this up. And I really want to emphasize this, that in all the other countries I've named, you don't have the right to believe or not to believe in those societies. If you don't follow their belief system, you are persecuted, you are raped, you are killed, you are enslaved. And as Canada has moved away from this, from our Christian roots, what are we moving into? Oppression, slavery, poverty, violence. So my friends, you need to pick a side and you need to educate yourself and you need to be committed to that and you need to join us in this battle. And so that's why I say that the Coronation Oath is key to overturning every policy and legislation that has violated our Constitution and our own personal rights in the last 11 years. And it's very important that we make it a priority to go in and educate our elected officials on this. And David's going to help us do that tonight. But before he comes on, I will share my screen, and then I will just show you where you can get the information on our website. We provide an information page, and then you can access that information and educate yourself like in 10 minutes. You can share this information with others and even with your elected officials, and then go in and have a conversation with them about it. If you put the Coronation Oath into the search engine, this is the page that would come up. So we've addressed multiculturalism, the Coronation Oath, and the Constitution. And if you keep going down to the bottom of the page, you'll see that there are other interviews that we've had with David on rights and freedoms. Here's one that's called Fact or Fiction. Like I said, we've been busy. And a really important one, of course, is land property and your rights. And David and I will also be talking about the legal notices that he has been sending to the Senate. David has shared copies with us that we've sent them to the MPs, to the Governor General, and to the senators to tell them what their obligations and their duties are regarding the coronation oath. So now, before we begin, to emphasize the very fact that this is not ceremonial. It is not something within Canada that doesn't apply anymore to the Commonwealth. And I was so pleased when this bishop came out about a month ago and he made a statement to the king. Because as you know, King Charles is not upholding the oath. And in fact, he's had Ramadan, Islamic celebrations at the castle. He supports the LGBTQ and all kinds of other sick and nefarious things. So we want to get to the bottom of this. And I'll just play about a minute of what this gentleman says. I would say it would be worth looking him up and listening to his whole letter and statement. He reads it, but this is one section that verifies the Coronation Oath is not some historic document that doesn't apply anymore.
May I be so bold as to observe that your coronation oath was not a poetic formality. It was a solemn vow made before Almighty God to maintain and preserve the Protestant Reformed religion established by law. Those words bind the conscience of the sovereign. They remind the Crown that its authority is not merely constitutional but moral. The monarch is not merely a symbol of national continuity, but a custodian of the spiritual inheritance that shaped this realm.
I look forward now, Heather, if you want to introduce David, and then we're going to get into a deeper conversation on this.
Thank you, Tanya. We're always so delighted to have our good friend, David Lindsay, join us on the Empower Hour. David has been involved in freedom issues for over 30 years. He's the co-founder of Common Law Education and Rights, or CLEAR for short. He's the author of several books, including The Annotated Criminal Charging Procedure in Canada, and he's recognized as an expert on the Coronation Oath, the Constitution, and the sacred duties of elected officials and the Crown. Will you all please help me welcome David Lindsay. David, it's so good to see you once again. Welcome to the Empower Hour.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Heather, and welcome, David. I know that you have just been traveling. You and I actually were both in Ottawa at the same time. Yeah. And so we took advantage of that. I met up with you and we met with an MP. I won't share his name right now, but this is in direct reflection of what it is that we want to do. We're leading the example for our viewers of what needs to be done. So we met with this MP because we wanted to introduce the coronation oath to him because he was completely unaware of it. But interestingly, his staffer had heard of it. And we're finding that at another MP's office that we've connected with as well. The staffer is very, very interested in the coronation oath, wants to learn more about it. And this could be the beginning of a massive breakthrough in Canada if we could be successful in the conversation ending up in the House of Commons or provincial legislatures. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes one person to make a difference. And right now it's been ignored because nobody has raised the issue, right? And it's the first time that notices have been sent to the Governor General or even members of Parliament. telling them that you don't have the power to give royal assent to various bills because you swore an oath that you would not aid and advise the king to give royal assent to these types of bills. And this has never, ever happened before. People have talked about the government's duty to check each bill to see if it complies with the charter, but nobody ever talks about whether the bills comply with the Constitution as a whole, and that includes the rules of succession of the king and his coronation oath. And it's a shame over the decades that that's never happened. But as Lord Mackey once said, it's a duty on every member of Parliament to make sure that if they aid and advise the king to give royal assent to a certain bill, that they have done their due diligence and are not telling the king to give royal assent to a bill that violates his oath. So the duty under Section 91 of the BNA Act, the duty is incumbent on every member of Parliament and every MLA that before they give royal assent to a bill, to make sure that it's not violating the king's oath. And that's interesting because of the oath that they take, the oath of allegiance and the oath of office, that is to the king himself. That is not to the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, or any other party. Indeed, it's not even to the people. The oath is to the king, and that they will aid and advise the king. And if they're going to aid and advise the king, the primary thing that they need to aid and advise the king is to uphold the principles of the Protestant Christian religion in Canada, which has been part of our law since 1650, 1688 for sure. And it's important to know that Parliament is not supreme. They're not gods, and they cannot pass any bill they want. There's limitations to what they can do insofar as there's limitations to what the king can do. So I'm really, really hopeful as we slowly get this into the members of Parliament that we can convince them that their oath to the king overrides any loyalty to any political party that they're involved in. And if they're threatened to be exhumed from the political party, well, so be it. That goes along with the oath that they took to the king right from the beginning. And it's interesting, somebody was mentioning today, one of the Conservative Party members, about how the Liberal governments were threatening them and using fear tactics on them in order to cross the floor over to the Liberal parties. And several Conservatives are now coming forward and saying this is what the Liberals have tried to do to us to get us to cross the floor using fear and intimidation tactics. So that wouldn't be the case if their only concern was my oaths to the king. I won't aid and advise him to break his oath. Once that's established, floor crossing wouldn't even matter because they would just look at the bills and determine if it violates God's laws in the Bible, and that would be the end of the matter.
Right. And so for those of our viewers who aren't familiar with the coronation oath, let's back up for just a moment and go over some of the details of when Queen Elizabeth took this oath and then King Charles, because everybody would say, I imagine it would be a gut reaction, a knee-jerk reaction from our viewers when we mention the king. Of course, knowing who King Charles is and what a traitor he is to the kingdom, it's like, well, how can you tell us that we need to abide by whatever the king says? But the king is violating his oath. That's the key word here, is that he's in violation of the oath. And that's why this bishop wrote a letter reminding him of his oath. He is bound by that. Yep. And what the consequences are, I don't know, but that still doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing our part in insisting that the Canadian government follow the oath as well. So where do you want to begin with that with Queen Elizabeth, and then where King Charles had actually tried to change the oath to an interfaith movement, of course, because of his strong lack of commitment towards the Christian faith?
Well, if we could just show my screen for a second, I want to just show a brief part about the coronation oath, a video that I have, and a couple slides dealing with that very issue.
4 Knights of the Garter, the Dukes of Wellington and Portland, the Earl Fortescue and the Viscount Arundel, bring forward a golden canopy, which they hold over Her Majesty, so that the sacred moment of anointing, normally never seen, is shielded from all eyes.
So the reason I wanted to raise that is this anointing goes all the way back to King Solomon in the Bible. And it's been generally done under canopy or without the public ever witnessing it. But I just wanted to raise that in the sense that every aspect of it, and in a way, I'm kind of glad I kept some of these slides on the side here. For example, the sword that is presented to the king or queen when they get sworn. It's the signified defense of the poor. So the king has a constitutional duty to protect the poor. The bracelets that are given to the king as well are also there to basically pledge that the bond which unites the queen is through Jesus Christ. And the whole thing is a Christian ceremony. The orb is set under the cross, and the king is steadfastly defend as defender of Christ's religion. And this is not possible. It's not possible under the present immigration laws and the present other bills that are going through Parliament right now. So the implications that I wanted to show from this is the entire procedure is Christian based. Every aspect of it, every word said, every emblem, every item involved has a Christian heritage to it. And the ultimate objective is for the Queen to keep that oath. Oaths are not, like, all power flows from the oath. So if they're going to do it, members of Parliament have no more power than the king does. So they cannot aid and advise the king to break the Christian religion as well. So it's really, really critical to go back to the beginning and not just look at the charter, even though it says the supremacy of God in there, and to remember we are not a multicultural country at all. We are and always have been a Christian country. And your comment, Tanya, about secularism earlier, somebody mentioned about a court case where the Supreme Court said that the government has an obligation just to make sure that we do not turn atheistic. But in my view, there's no difference between atheism and secularism. The effect is
Absolutely.
no matter what, right? Do you see a difference in the effect and the outcome? I don't. You either uphold and maintain God's laws or you don't. And whether you don't via atheism, secularism, or something else is irrelevant. The fact is, here's the dividing line. You uphold God's laws or you don't. And that's it. And that's what we need to convince our members of Parliament of. And we'll be back before Stephen Fuhr's office here as well on Friday for an hour. And we'll be protesting from 12 to noon in front of his office again, reminding him of that duty for his oath as well. Yeah.
Well, I think it's very important, David, and I hope our viewers are beginning to understand the importance of this. Again, we go back to knee-jerk reactions that people have as immediately, oh, we're a secular nation. It's like, oh yeah, how are you enjoying that? And that it's, oh, we're a multicultural nation. It's like, well, how are you enjoying that? And then it came, well, we're a post-national state with no core identity. And then I go back to, that's an impossibility. How are you enjoying that? Because that's totalitarianism, that is communism, that's, you just put a label on it. And so, people will buy into, because maybe they're not people of faith, they're not Christians, and so they reject the thought that we're a Christian nation, but they're not thinking about the bigger picture and the consequence for them personally, because literally Christian nations are the only nations they can live in where they could believe or not believe and still function in society and, live a life according to how they like. But we do need to have boundaries and parameters, as with everything. Trudeau came in campaigning on anything and everything goes, but that again isn't a reality. You have to have some absolutes. We have to have laws. We have to have rules in order for a society to be healthy. And so our laws and rules based on biblical principles, if we take the 10 Commandments, it says you shall not lie. Well, that's a good one for society to live by. And, you shouldn't cheat or steal. That's again a good law to live by. And if you want to make a comparison, just look at what the Liberal government has done. They've lied, they've cheated, they're stealing our funds, our money. Okay, there's no climate change. This is a massive wealth transfer. And then it says, honor your mother and father with a promise. It's the only one, a commandment with a promise, and it will go well with you. Well, look at what the government is doing to our elderly. Look what they did to them during so-called COVID. They left them alone in rooms to die on their own. They kept them from their families. They left them hopeless. And now what are they doing? They're freely offering them aid because they're too much of a financial burden. So all of these commandments are being broken. What about murder? And one of the top two are, you shall have no other gods before me or make for your idols. Well, what have we done under multiculturalism? It's been misinterpreted, first of all, in our charter, because it says in the preamble, Canada is founded on the supremacy of God and the rule of law, colon. And David and I were up late at night talking about this on the phone. Like, how can it be the supremacy of God and the rule of law? And David said, because that colon means that everything that follows must apply to the supremacy of God and rule of law, which means that we have many cultures living here in Canada, but they must assimilate and integrate. And they certainly must speak one of our two languages, two of our official languages. I don't want to listen to the town of Babel when I'm in the bank, the grocery store, or any other place, or walking down the street. And I will kindly say to people, speak English or French. And yesterday, too, we have a bit, talking Hindu behind me for 20 minutes in a lineup. And finally, as I'm leaving, I turned to them and they said, it's a multicultural nation. So I am appealing to our viewers, pick a side. If you are not liking the direction this is going, help us to appeal to government leaders that they have a duty and an oath. And within that are restrictions as well as what they need to be doing. And so I think this is one of our most important campaigns right now, is lobbying government and bringing awareness to the Coronation Oath. So sorry for that long spiel, David, but back to you.
No, that's exactly true. And, one of the things about legislation is that the normal rules of English grammar apply. Just like, for example, in this book here, let's see if I can get it right, that principles in there will apply to the charter when you talk about the full colon. And I'm not going to go through it all, it's pretty long, but it'll show you in there that a full colon is exactly what you have mentioned. Everything that follows after that is under the parameters of those two overriding criteria in our Constitution. And it's interesting that in the Coronation Oath of the King, that is where your property rights begin. And they go all the way back to the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal. That presupposes that you own property in the first place. Otherwise, that commandment could not even be there, right? So it's important that we go all the way back to the beginning. And case law, all throughout English history, Lord Denning had at one point mentioned, he said that the reason the English custom or the English law and the English culture flourished for so long is that everybody in positions of power were Christian, including judges, politicians. They were all appointed because they were Christians. That is certainly not the case today. And I submit that if you're sitting on the bench, if you're a politician in government, and you're swearing an oath to the king or queen, you cannot do that if you believe in a God other than the Protestant Christian God, because you cannot serve two masters. And it's important that a lot of these judges, I believe, could be removed for swearing false oaths. So it's interesting when King Charles, when he took his oath in 1953, it was the first time it was ever video recorded, and it was a major ceremony and hours long that they did. When King Charles did it, there was very little at all. He did not want it to be a public demonstration, and I believe he didn't want it to be a public demonstration because he didn't want the public to know the entire Christian base of what this ceremony is. They knew that in 1953. Everybody knew it was Christian based. And Queen Elizabeth kissed the Bible, swore to uphold the Bible. That was and remains the royal law, is that Bible. And if King Charles is trying to uphold Islam, which he has professed to admire in the past and has been seen at various Islamic events in the past, then I submit to you he swore a false oath and he shouldn't be there. And one of your concerns you expressed the other day, Tanya, and I share it, is what's going to happen when he dies, because his kids are professed atheists.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're an atheist, you cannot swear to uphold with all your utmost of your ability the principles of the Christian religion if you don't believe in them. Then you probably don't even know what they are.
In times of financial uncertainty, safeguarding your assets is increasingly important. In response to ongoing inflation, economic challenges, and market instability, many Canadians are adopting the timeless strategy of investing in precious metals. Historically, gold and silver have held their value, safeguarding your assets against economic turmoil. Action4Canada is pleased to announce our partnership with Steve of Sun City Silver, providing valued members of A4C with expanded investment opportunities designed to help you achieve your financial goals. Steve is an ally of the Freedom Movement, and he's offering members of Action4Canada exclusive access to some of Canada's premier prices. By leveraging his connections with Silver Gold Bull, you can access competitive rates for securing your precious metals. Silver Gold Bull is a trusted Canadian leader, offering live pricing 24/7 and boasting nearly 400,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. For an order of $5,000, be sure to indicate you're an Action4Canada member and receive a complimentary 1967 silver dollar, courtesy of Sun City Silver. Expand your collection further by referring a new customer who places a similar order, and Steve will reward you with a special bonus thank you gift. Your purchase with Steve is a dual investment. You invest in your future while simultaneously supporting the Freedom Movement with a percentage of each sale benefiting Action4Canada. For more information, be sure to visit action4canada.com/purchasing-precious-metals/. Secure your assets. Protect your future. Support Action4Canada and the Freedom Movement. The information presented is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to provide financial, legal, or tax advice, as we are not licensed financial advisors, accountants, or attorneys and cannot provide professional counsel. Be advised that the content and information provided does not create a client relationship. We recommend you consult with a qualified professional advisor before making any financial, legal, or tax decisions. Please note that Action4Canada is not responsible for an individual's financial outcome. Remember, your decisions are your own, and we recommend doing your own research before making any investment.
So what's the recourse? I was thinking about that as well. We've never experienced this in the history of the Coronation Oath, at least not to my awareness. And so the king is in violation of the oath. The potential is that his heirs will definitely be in violation of the oath. But it's important to note that when King Charles was moving toward the ceremony, he did try to change it. He did try to make it an interfaith movement where Islam could play a part, and the Church of England ferociously came out against him. And I'm just wondering, where's the Church of England right now in holding him to account? And that's why I played the clip of this bishop, because I think what he's saying really matters. And it's critical that we turn this around.
Throughout history, the only time kings have been held accountable is when people revolted and hold them accountable. King James was physically thrown out of England. He was chased out of England for breaking the contract and breaking the oath. And I believe there's a couple other kings that have been kicked out or removed from the throne or hung as a result of breaking the contract as well. And it is a contract. As a result, I find that if King Charles is going to be removed, then it's up to the people to be able to do that in some manner. The problem that I see facing today is that for the first time in history, The state has all the guns. They've got all the weapons. They've got all the tools. They've got all the spying equipment, um, and so on. And they've got the media to manipulate the masses in a way that has never happened throughout history. So when King James was removed in the 1600s, they didn't have the mass media to brainwash all the masses of the public to go on his side, for example. Everybody knew what he was doing was wrong. He was a noted homosexual, and everybody knew that it was completely wrong. So now we're in a situation where the government en masse is convincing all our students, our kids, and the public at large what to believe. And that makes it really difficult to say, how are we going to physically kick the king off the throne under those circumstances? I don't profess to have all the answers. It's difficult to go to court because it's the king's court, and the judges are sworn in allegiance to the king. And if the king is breaking his oath, does their oath of allegiance to the king mean that they have to protect him when he's breaking the law? I don't have answers for all of these questions, but they're important. And I do know that at some point we need a way, we need a method to be able to get the king deposed off of the throne of England and to bring back the importance and the sincerity involved in taking these oaths, that it applies every time they give royal assent. It applies every time through orders in council, or any time treaties are made or anything the king does, that they cannot violate God's laws in the process. And make no mistake, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but that is the challenge that lies ahead of us. And throughout history, it has always been done by the people refusing to comply with the government. And Tanya, I've said that for years. This is the real only source of peaceful civil disobedience, for people to come back and say, I'm not going to comply with what you're telling me to do, because I have duties to God, and therefore I have rights to the state, which is lower. And you can't force me to break my duties to God. So there is no other way for you to commit peaceful civil disobedience other than this. And eventually that's what it's going to come down to, in my opinion, is if we want to get the king removed, we need to get a lot of Christians throughout the country refusing to comply with statutes and bills that violate God's laws. And if we're charged, then we need to raise these issues in court, and as a defense possibly, or challenge, or however the case may be. And keep in mind that if one judge breaks his oath or breaks the law and erroneously or falsely charges or convicts somebody, that doesn't mean we walk away and go, oh no, the judge ruled against us, we've lost. We have to abandon this and move on to something else. We have to dig in our heels and say, no, you're wrong. This is the law. And you can't break it. And if you do break it, we're still not going to comply with you. And it takes courage, and it takes courage for everyone to stand up to the people who are going to put their necks on the line and say, no, we're not going to comply, to support them as well. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the Christian community throughout Canada to say, no, we're not going to comply. And it can be done in a variety of ways, through peaceful civil disobedience, for the churches sending notices to the king and to government and saying, this violates your oath of allegiance or your oath of office, and we're not going to comply with it. And we need active participation by more of these people. And in order to do that, they need to believe in their heart and their soul that God is supreme in our law, and that they have to comply with it. No more fence sitting.
Well, I think you've just nailed it right there. And that's why we're doing this show, is to help people, whether they're Christians or not in Canada, understand how important the Coronation Oath, how important this agreement and commitment are, and how we need to unite and come together. And we do need to do that in civil disobedience. And that can be done in different ways. But what I see happening in Europe and the UK, when we talk about, well, how do you remove the king? And you talk about a revolt, but I believe a revolution is happening. I was really, really pleased yesterday to see tens of thousands of men and women showing up in the UK in protest against the government, against Keir Starmer and the King, of course. And I was watching a clip today of Tommy Robinson, who right now is in the United States. And this man will go down as a hero because he started that in the UK. He started this, I don't want to call it an uprising, of course, in a negative way. It's very, very positive because at some point when your young women and children are being raped and murdered and people are being beheaded and stabbed to death by foreigners and people who will never align and have no intention to align with our values, especially our Christian biblical values, we have a right to stand up and defend ourselves. And it's just been shocking to me how the men in society on a whole have been so dumbed down, whether behind a desk or an office, or we're so comfortable in this era, in this time, that men are allowing this to happen in their communities. And I'm hoping and praying. I've seen a real shift in the last year or two of men starting to rise up and lead, but we need more of that. And David, I look at when Hitler rose to power, we all say it's like one bad dude with, a few other comrades helping him out. Why didn't somebody, a vigilante group, go in and take them out? How can this kind of evil in such a coordinated manner continue when we're the majority? How did this happen?
Because the same bankers control both sides of every war, of every dispute, of everything that's going on. The same bankers are in the background that are controlling it. And ultimately, our group Clear was founded on getting rid of usury or interest out of the money system to get back our freedoms, to eliminate income tax and so on. And as long as usury or interest is in the money system with these bankers controlling it in the background, they will control, as Rothschild said, they will control all the leaders, and they don't care who makes the laws. And that is going to be the ultimate solution, is getting rid of interest out of the money system. And once that happens, and people will keep their profits, their money that they make, I shouldn't say profits, but and when that happens, Tanya, families will stay together. You won't see the divorce rate. It'll just plummet. Families will stay together and crime will go down and people's belief in God will go up once again. And I think it's going up right now anyways due to the hardships involved that are being imposed on us. And I'm grateful to hear in England that the uprisings that they have are based on Christianity. They're not just based in anger or something that says the price of gas is too high. They're based on the fact that the government, Starmer and King Charles, are breaking the oath. They're breaking their law. They're breaking the contract. And people are saying, no, you need to get back to that. In Canada, it's a little different because most people are unaware of it. But more and more, Tanya, through your great work and ours, through all of our efforts and getting it out across Canada, thousands and thousands of people know about this now that had no idea just 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, I agree, David. And when you look at Europe, the UK, Denmark, Germany, France, and Ireland, especially in Ireland, man, the men didn't sit back too long. All of a sudden, they were being flooded with Muslims, and starting was a year or 2 years ago. And I think they're kind of frontlining the fight because they're trying to use colonialism on them. And it's like they were on that island first. Like they can't be, they can't be assumed that was true. And so they've come out in force. But the major thing is they are raising the Christian flag. Like this is the big difference. I happen to be reading through the book of Jeremiah right now, and I would encourage people, like, just go a couple of chapters in, and God is very, very serious about people allowing idols and false gods to enter their nations. And the whole point of it is in Second Chronicles as well, is God calls on, if my people will humble themselves and pray and truly confess their sins to the Lord, that he will heal their land. And that's what we're calling on Canadians to do. It's like, pick a side, understand that freedom does not exist aside from Christianity, and that we need this to thrive. And I believe the wave is coming to Canada's shores, where more and more people are going to be raising the Christian flag. Action for Canada has been doing this for 4 years now, and we're on the front line of the rallies, raising the Christian flags through our 7-week prayer walk for revival. And God is just answering massive prayers for Action for Canada through that, and blessing our organization. And I believe that comes from being uncompromising to the Word of God. So if God says, shut down the idols in your nation, then we need to shut down all the mosques and the temples. And that's just a simple fact. These people have countries where they can go worship their false gods. They're offending us. And, if it's between God and man, we've got to put God first and trust him then that he will lift this oppression and this threat that's coming against us. That's the kind of faith that viewers need. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. And again, if you're going to take action and say to the government, I don't want to comply with your laws, the options are limited. You say, well, it violates my charter rights. Well, there's loopholes under the sun on that. However, if you come back and you believe in your heart and your soul and your mind, and you're saying, no, you're violating your oath to uphold God's laws that you swore to me that you would protect, then that is where the power will come from, to sit back and say, no, it's not going to be easy. Criminals have, and they're still trying to rule the world. They've been trying to rule the world since the beginning of time. Our goal is to say, no, we're not going to comply and allow it, and try and make it a better place for those that come after us. And the only way that's going to happen is by us taking a stand. It doesn't, as God said in the Bible, he hated fence sitters. And as you've mentioned before, Tanya, to take a stand, you need to decide at some point whether you are going to support your beliefs or not. And there may be sacrifices. There may be, who knows what might happen. I don't think anybody's going to necessarily get killed in Canada, but there could be property rights issues and so on, and sacrifices. But ultimately, we also need to find a way to get the churches on board, because the churches have lost their way, starting way back in COVID. And they are the ones. I was listening to a sermon the other day by he does it on the radio every night, and I apologize. Grace to You, I think it's called. I forget his name. But he was pointing out the obligation that pastors and priests have when they're in our Christian churches and they're giving their sermons, the duty they have to accurately talk about the Bible passages that they're referring to. And that includes upholding God's laws. We're not there to be fence sitters. And we need to be able to sit back and say, this is what we've done to protect our rights and freedoms, because God told us we had a duty to do it. It's not just a right to tell the state, it's a duty that we have to God to tell the state, we're not going to do this anymore, what you're telling us to do.
How does the Coronation Oath apply? Because right now they've changed things with this false multiculturalism and the liberties that provides foreigners to come here and set up their what do you call it? Their tribes, right? You go to Richmond and nobody speaks English. Everybody's Chinese. You come to Surrey. They had the largest Vaisakhi parade in the world here. It used to be 100,000. I heard there was 600,000 Sikhs and Hindus showing up, and maybe not Hindus. What is it? Vaisakhi, I think, is the Sikhs. Yeah. And you walk around anywhere around here, you don't understand anything anybody's saying. So with that, then that progresses to, okay, there's an upcoming election for mayor, city council, MLA, MPP, whatever, and then MPs. And next thing you know, these individuals are voting for their own kind. And there is no mandate any longer for them to swear an oath on the Bible. And so the Coronation Oath, in bringing this back in, would 100% mean that Sikhs and Hindus wouldn't be able to sit in an elected position unless they were 100% committed to biblical values. Is that true, David? Or where would this work with what's going on?
My apologies. It's not just bringing it back in. It's already here, and it's never left us. It's us enforcing it.
Right. Thank you. Yes. But
Because it's
Mhm.
already there. But your point is well made. The oath is very clear in part 3. The king will, to his utmost of his ability, maintain and establish the principles of the Protestant Christian religion. That means even through orders and councils, signed treaties, whatever, he cannot simply have an invasion come in of other people and other cultures and false gods and so on, because that oath applies in every aspect of his duties.
Mhm.
So that's where the immigration comes in, that it violates the Constitution of Canada because they're allowing all these other people, these other cultures and false gods and religions to come in, and it's undermining ours. If you have 1 million people and suddenly you bring in 500,000, the only way that can happen is if you dilute the original 1 million people that you've got and their culture and their beliefs. As a result, we need to find a way um, to make sure that these politicians and the governments know that what they're I shouldn't say that. A lot of them at the very top do know what they're doing is
Mhm.
wrong. They're just evil people and they're doing it anyway. So we have to find a way to stop them. And one of the ways I appreciate your courage, Tanya, is telling them you won't talk that way in public. You will talk English or French, and if you don't like it, you need to assimilate. And if you don't like it, well, you don't have to come here. That's definitely one way that takes a lot of courage to do, and we need to have more and more people doing that. For example, um, having just got back from out east, it's
Uh,
really bad out east.
I was going to say to you, David, like I have this action that's ready to go. I just haven't had time to launch it. And it is directed at Mark Carney. Do you remember the guy from Air Canada? There was the plane crash with the fire truck, and two of the pilots died, and they were from Montreal, from Quebec. And he came out and had this ridiculous hissy fit over the fact that this CEO didn't also give the message in French. And I'm like, okay, well, right now we've got video after video of Muslims and Sikhs wearing RCMP uniforms, federal police uniforms, speaking in their foreign languages, to address the populations in their communities. So why we should be demanding that he now put a policy in place. I mean, you think it's a no-brainer, and everybody coming here has to speak English and French in public, in especially in business, and in federal positions, provincial, any government office, people and should not have to be accommodating foreigners because English is their second language. I don't want to stand in any government office and hear the person behind the desk talking Punjabi or talking, to the Muslims. And anyway, so just as you were saying that, it just brought to memory that he is such he doesn't have a standard just like Justin Trudeau. He uses whatever suits him at the time. And these are the kind of areas where we do need to hold the government to account, because then I wouldn't have to one by one politely tell people and have a conversation with them to say, you need to be speaking English. And they'll say, well, this is a multicultural nation, or why? And I said, because we can no longer go in public and understand even what each tribe is saying. You go through Superstore and you've got people speaking Chinese, speaking Hindu, Punjabi, and it's just not fair. It's not right. It's rude. Speak English, speak French, and let's just be done with all of this. So back to
Yep.
the elected officials and the Coronation Oath, because Arif Irani used to be the Governor General of Canada, Arif Irani, prior to the new one, or he was Attorney
Okay.
General. But then you also have Mickey Amory, who is the Attorney General, the provincial Attorney General in Alberta. And both of these gentlemen are Muslim, and they both took an oath on the Quran. So they were both using their positions to advance Islam, one provincially and one federally. And this
Yeah.
is suicide for us.
I would love to see, and in answer to that, that's so disheartening. I look at it and it reminds me of when Farnworth issued the emergency order here in 2020, March 18, and he issued an emergency order because of allegedly COVID. Meanwhile, the Emergencies Act did not allow for it. And my first thought is, where's all the lawyers? Somebody must have known in the legal community, because I knew about it, and somebody must have known he didn't have the power to do it. Where are all the lawyers fighting it and applying that? It's void right from that point forward. None of the lawyers came up and said a word. And it reminds me of exactly that right now. Where are all the lawyers when you get people coming in and swearing on a Quran? Where are all the lawyers to say, no, you can't do that? Our Constitution, Section 128, I think it is, just of the B&A Act, points out the oath that they have to take. So there's a provision in law that one constitutional document cannot override another. So you cannot use the multiculturalism in the charter to override the B&A Act, which came first in any event. And these oaths, Tanya, they go back to 1346 AD minimum. These oaths are some of the longest document requirements in our Constitution. They took an illegal and unconstitutional oath, and where are all the lawyers? And yet the lawyers want you to stand up for them if the government makes changes to their internal boards and everything else. I really don't care about the lawyers. They have thrown us to the wolves for decades. And I have a real problem. And that's not to say there's some not good ones. I have met dozens of really, 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 really good lawyers over the years. And we need to get somebody like that who also has the courage to be able to take this to court on a legal issue, because I've said before, there's only 4 ways to get justice. You have civil disobedience, you have war, politics, and judicial. War is not an option. They have all the guns, they've got everything, spying equipment we don't have. So we need to find a way of peaceful civil disobedience by us personally saying, no, we're not going to comply to these bills that break the law, these statutes and orders, and B, politically, to get our people into office. And we've only started this, the last election under COVID is when people have really started to get people who believe in the law in power. And now we need to get the judicial aspect is going as well, all 3 of them. And on a political level, I want to mention, Tanya, this is the book that we gave to Mr. Mantle in Ottawa. And in here, in this book, are some excerpts from our presentation that we did with the help of Action4Canada and Terenzio and Heather as well. And in here are documents that if anybody wants a copy to give to your MP, let me know. We'll email you a copy of this. All you need to do is email it to your MP and say, this is the law that you swore to uphold. And we want you from now on and this point forward to stop voting with the party and the leader of the party and apply your oath and not aid and advise the king to break the law. So we would love to have this go out to every MP, not just on an mass mailing, but to go out from people that live in the constituency where the MP resides. So that way, at least the MP goes, well, this is coming from somebody in New Brunswick. What do I care about him in BC? If it's coming from their constituency in New Brunswick or in BC, they will be much more apt to read it and hold them accountable. And if anybody on the show wants to get a copy of this, definitely let us know through yourself or through me. We'll send them a copy, and then you can start getting a hold of your MP. Not just one, but if there's 50 people in a riding or 100 or 200 or 300, everybody needs to start getting this to our MPs, because Tanya, this is the last year that Action4Canada and you personally have started this is the first time, politically speaking, that we are starting to hold them to their oath and let them know that we know about it, and we have to continue it unabated in the future until we get success.
Absolutely, David. Yeah, that's why we've definitely been at our chapter leader meetings on Monday. These are our marching orders. Get into every elected official's office possible. Start bringing awareness to the oath and holding them to account. It's educating them. And it is really unfortunate that literally they don't know about this oath. And we've been going at this since the beginning of December. And as we were addressing Bill C9, you and I were talking, and right away we got into saying you were talking about writing a letter to the Governor General and just saying, look, it doesn't matter what you do with Bill C-9. The Governor General, based on her duty to the King and the Coronation Oath, cannot give this bill royal assent. And then we followed that up with a letter also to the members of Parliament, telling them exactly what their duties and responsibilities and limits were. And then it, of course, went through third reading and got to the Senate, and you created a letter to the Senate. And we've also sent that out. So this is from December until currently, we have been doing call to action campaigns for all of our members and viewers to email right now the Senate. They need to hear from you, because as their staffers are being flooded with this, you know, there are going to be those staffers who are going to be reading this letter, and it's just a seed planted. And then we're praying that the Lord is going to have it grow. And I believe that that's going to happen. I believe that we are going to start hearing about the Coronation Oath in the legislature, within the House of Commons. I believe that there are lawyers that are listening to us and are going to start picking this up and seeing that this is a massively great defense or legal action that we can put forward, whether it's against mass immigration. This is really key to saving Canada and having something wonderful to pass on to our children and grandchildren. And so if our viewers have not yet taken the call to action campaign and simply copied and pasted the letter that we provide you and send it to the senators that are within your province, we ask you that you would do that today. It will be in the description when we post the video. It's Wednesday today, of course. We're going to post it on Thursday. So just take 5 minutes. And this is how our voice is rising nationwide, and we are reaching millions of Canadians. So just understand that we are the movement. We are the movement that has the power to put good people in office. But it's not going to happen if you feel hopeless and you give up and just allow a small group of us to be keeping this fight going. This could be over so fast at the next election if we have great election oversight and if we are continuing to expose the corruption. So David, what would you say in closing about Bill C-9? Because I know we went into a big talk about the Coronation Oath, because to put it in perspective, for the title of the show was Bill C-9 and the Coronation Oath, I'm hoping that people got the message as to why the senators cannot legally approve this bill.
Absolutely. They took the same oath under Section 91 as the MPs in the House of Commons. And that's required. I forget the section to be an act for members of the legislatures as well, are required to take the same oath to the King. And they are obligated by the very same duties under that same oath to the King. So they cannot aid and advise the King to give royal assent to it or send along their approval if it violates God's laws. And the thing about the Senate is the senators, despite the fact that most of them are Liberal appointees now, they don't sit in any particular riding. Many of them are not even politicians, period. They're not MLAs, MPs, never were. As a result, the Senate is looked at as a whole. I think there's 100 and some odd senators. And we need to send it to all the senators. And let all of them know, because there's no loyalty to any particular riding for any person in the Senate. They're all individuals, separate, and they're all bound by the same oath that they take. And the other thing that I think is important, Tanya, is when we're dealing with provincial MLAs who are also bound by the same oath, we need to start getting and letting them know, if you believe that the oath is supreme in our law, and God henceforth is supreme in our law, and you have to aid and advise the King to do his utmost ability to do that. As a provincial MLA, you need to bring the Lord's Prayer back into the school system. We grew up on that, and as a result, Tanya, when you did the Lord's Prayer in school, it was in your mind for at least a second, a minute, or whatever. It was in your mind, and you knew, even if you didn't believe, you knew everybody else believed in God, and that was the basis of our law. Right now, out of sight, out of mind. Not only is it that in the school system, people don't believe, they don't think about it, by not having it in the schools, it recognizes other faiths And I heard rumors, unconfirmed, that they were recognizing Islam and other religions in various schools in Canada as well. But at a provincial level, that's the first duty of obligation on the MPs. Get it back into the school system to do their utmost and ability to uphold Christianity and make the kids know this is what our law is based on as well.
I think Canadians need to stop being so nice. I mean, we're being offended every single day at every level of government, in society, in the grocery store, in our school systems. I just heard that up in Prince George, the East Indians are putting together some sort of course to teach their language, like as if everything else is secondary. This has got to stop. I don't care about that. Their human rights have to apply to what we're talking about today. This is not a free for all. No other country, no other non-Christian nation is going through this. They would never put up with it. We have a right to our sovereignty. We have a right to uphold our beliefs. If they don't like it, they can leave. It really is that simple, and we've got to stop accommodating them, and we've got to stop allowing our elected officials to pretend otherwise. So with that, David, we're at the top of the hour here. I just want to thank you so much. But what I do want to encourage, the booklet that you were showing, I know somebody's already requested it in the chat. What I would like to do, that one, I would actually like to do another Empower Hour with you, where you will give a presentation on what specifically is in that bound copy.
Okay.
And then we will make it available to everybody. I'll send it to our massive email list. And then with that video, we will encourage people to send it to their elected officials at all levels. And I got to say, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they can send it to the local law enforcement as well. Are they not bound by this commitment also?
They're bound. They're bound in the execution of their duties to the king as well, that they cannot enforce laws that violate the Bible. So Bill C-9, the police cannot, pursuant to their oath of office and oath of allegiance, they cannot enforce that in the execution of their duties. Absolutely.
Good.
Yep.
All right. So, well, I'm going to look forward to that. We should do it fairly soon as well, though, because I don't know how much longer Bill C-9 is going to be in the Senate, but it's not going to stop there. We're going to have to go after the Governor General. You've already served her personally. And with our campaigns, we have literally served every single senator multiple times, their office, so that they would see it. People have done it individually to senators that are just in their province. We've sent it to every single sitting MP. They can never say they didn't know, but we got to keep this massive pressure on. And if it does pass through the Senate without making the required amendments, then we're going to go after the Governor General, but there might be legal action coming. We can't just sit back and accept that they are going to violate the oath and continue to push agendas in Canada that are completely dismantling our nation. It's got everybody very sad and upset. But I believe that as we move towards uncompromisingly honoring the Word of God, throughout biblical scripture, the example is always that God steps in and he revives the nation and he honors us. And you can see that happening in Hungary and in Poland. They are raised the name of the Lord Jesus Christ through these leaders in their countries. You go and look at every country that's winning right now, and it's the populist movement that are turning back to godly principles. And that's why Canada needs to do the same, and we need to ferociously make a point to do it, move full steam ahead. So my friend, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. So just God bless you in the work that you continue to do.
Thank you. Blessings to you as well, and everyone you're working with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I hope that information is helpful tonight and that you will give us a thumbs up and share this video. We really need that encouragement with all the censorship going on. Next week's guests will be Kim and myself. I'm actually really excited about this. The title is Advocacy is Driving Great Wins, and we're going to be emphasizing a lot of what we were talking about tonight, and the very fact that, government leaders, elected officials have been lobbied by minority groups. And they have used self-victimization. They have tried to distort and misread our Constitution and our Charter of Rights and Freedoms to advance their agendas. That's talking about the Muslims, the Sikhs, the LGBTQ, and anybody else that is vying for position here, and some really ungodly legislation and principles that are destroying us. Like it is ripping us apart, tearing us apart. I just can't express it enough. So what we want to do is we're going to highlight the win in Alberta with Bill 25 and Bill 28 passing through the legislature. They've done first reading. We want to see this get to second and third reading, where they are literally going to pull all of the political and ideological agendas out of the school. And Kim and Sandra, it's at the top of my X account. I've got a clip there. Well, it's about 20 minutes of the overview of a year ago when Alberta started to remove the pornographic and sexually explicit books. And we go over the fact of how we provided a binder to the education minister. And within that binder were all the disgusting images from these books, and even the written word that is so graphic, you can't even imagine reading any of this in public. And yet this is what our children are receiving. And the Minister of Education was seriously shocked by what he was looking at. He said, he used the word gobsmacked. Okay. And we're sitting there going, is he sincere? Is he genuine? This was like November of 2024, because it's like we have been sending a PDF to every elected official across this country. And was it staffers within the office that didn't think that this was relevant and that the Minister of Education should know? And so we pressed in. Perseverance is absolutely critical, and perseverance pays off. And we just want to show you how this is done, and that squeaky wheel, as my old Uncle Ed always says, gets the attention. And so that's what's happened with the SOGI 123, critical race theory, DEI. This was all in our notice of liability as well, that all this stuff has to be pulled from the schools. And praise the Lord, Alberta is listening. Thank you to Daniel Smith. Thank you to Minister Nicolaides, who really took the information we had and realized, you know what, our schools are being used for social justice causes. And I think parents are sending them there to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. And we have anti-bullying, like this specific anti-bullying only on one minority group that barely existed before all of this this ideology entered the school system. So we're pulling back the veil. We're exposing it. You know, we've got elected officials that are listening. We're working in other provinces, but boy, could we sure use your help. So Kim and I are going to be encouraging you as well to join a chapter in your community and give our chapter leaders support and get actively involved. And if there isn't a chapter in your community, to join us and just even have a conversation with us as to what that will entail. All right. So the closing scripture for tonight is from Proverbs 16:12. It's a good one. It's about kings, and it's a direct statement from the Lord to the kings. It says, "It is an abomination for kings to commit wickedness, for a throne is established by righteousness." And we've been talking a lot tonight, David and I have, that if we want good people in office, then we've got to focus on Christian leaders, because we're just not getting this from non-Christian leaders. They have to really feel a fire in their belly and a commitment to know and understand that the Lord will bring consequences upon countries that are no longer upholding the word of God. And that's why that's why Canada is suffering so badly right now, because we turned our back on God and biblical scripture. So he says, like, if we got to raise up good kings. And so the next verse that I've chosen for tonight is from Psalm 2:10-12. And it says, "Therefore, you kings, be wise, be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. Kiss his son, or he will be angry, and your way will lead to your destruction, for his wrath can flare up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him." So the Bible is very, very clear that when we turn our back on God and we go to idol worship, sexual depravity, just go to the Bible and look throughout history. You're going to see it. And I'm just saying, you know, aren't enough of you saying, "I'm calling uncle." Like, okay, Lord, I've had enough of this, and I'm going to start sharpening my own walk with the Lord and start talking to God about the direction this country is going, and even confess it as sin in your own life that you turned a blind eye to it. And if you're somebody that's just learning about the Lord, then you don't know whether God really exists or Jesus Christ is the Son of God, but you have this niggle inside that you've been exposed to the evil. You're seeing secularism. You're seeing how all these other cultures are living that are based on false gods, and you saw how a Christian nation once functions, and you're seeing something is very relevant here towards the Word of God, and that maybe God exists, and that, yeah, maybe Jesus Christ is real. And if you're in that questioning period, then you could even pray to God and say, you know what? I don't know if you're real or not, but make yourself known to me. And God will make himself known. And if you want to reach out to our prayer team, or you want to write us at call2@action4canada.com, just do that. And we'll have somebody get in touch with you and maybe answer some of your questions. Okay, because the very life of Canada is on the line, and that's why we're out here pounding the pavement about why Christianity is the foundation, and we need to uphold that in this nation. So on that note, I look forward to seeing you next time. God bless you, and God bless Canada.
Chapters across the nation. We are going to be in every town and every city, and we are going to build communities within these communities of like-minded people who are actually going to care for one another again and love on each other and give each other the help when they're down. We are going to use the teams and the people that build within chapters to support our businesses. The government's actions are completely 100% unlawful. Judgment will again be found on justice, and those with virtuous hearts will pursue it. You have a virtuous heart if you are here today pursuing freedom and righteousness. And then verse 23 comes along with a promise. God says he will turn the sins of evil people back on them. He will destroy them for their sins. I take great comfort in that, because I serve a mighty living God who has allowed us to go through this season of discomfort because we as a nation had turned our backs on him, and we need to get right. So I am just going to thank you so much. I'm going to say God bless you and God